Could I just ask for a hand for the wonderful Follett family who besides paying for the other half of this provided a lot of the food themselves and arranged for the donation of the rest. I want to talk a little bit about sort of how I came to my conclusions on this project. I was approached, as were other mayors of the community and a number of other elected officials, August of 2010, by representatives of SSA. Peter Goldmark was also in that meeting, the head of DNR, with a proposal that SSA had that they were ready to move forward with a multi-purpose bulk cargo facility at Cherry Point, and it would provide jobs at a time when jobs were sorely needed, and provide some tax base for some jurisdictions that could use that. And so all of us thought that it sounded pretty good. I did not fully jump on board, but I said I thought that I would support that as it was presented. And so that's where I was in August of 2010. Around October of 2010, around the end of October, they came forward and said, we need full disclosure. We want to be transparent in this process. And so we want to let you know that coal is part of the mix. And so, my first reaction was, well, I really appreciate that they're letting us know that coal is part of the mix, because clearly that changes things a little bit. And so one of the things we did is they had asked to have City Council consider a resolution. We pulled that, so we said, we need to figure this out before we have that resolution considered. And then I have other things to do with my day job, so this wasn't the only thing on my plate, and just kind of percolated along for a couple months. And there was a little bit of investigation going on, but not a lot. And then they said, well, we're going to deliver our full information sometime in February. The end of February, they came out with a proposal that was for 48 million tons a year of coal. And they'd already signed a contract that very day with Peabody Energy for 24 million tons a year for at least the first 40 years that the pier was in place. And they said, oh, but maybe after 10 years, if market conditions warrant it, we might build another pier that would be much smaller. It would actually be closer to the original proposal. Build a pier that would take care of about 6 million tons a year of other bulk commodities. Now, I was just talking with Fred Felleman, who may go more into this later, but he's saying there's no space to build another pier. And one of the things we know is that you cannot have coal sharing a pier with other commodities. It doesn't work very well. So at that point I said, well, I need to really look at this now. And so I directed some staff and asked them to look at some specific issues, and collectively a group of us came up with a number of questions. And on February 11th we put out some questions that were kind of challenging. We also met with Burlington Northern and SSA some more about it. And it was clear that this was not, by most people's definitions, a multi-purpose facility. And it was also clear that from Burlington Northern's perspective, they didn't care about the impacts to our community. Now, I believe in measuring twice and cutting once. So despite having that information, I didn't immediately respond and take a position against the terminal. I started getting more engaged, though. I went to a forum that the Sierra Club had, so I wasn't the first opportunity for people to speak out, and I want to give Sierra Club the recognition, because they actually put on a forum called the Coal Hard Truth. And I was the conservative end of that spectrum of speakers. And in fact, I was called a wimp because I would not take a stand at that time. But I believe very much in following the process, and that by the time that was held, I'd already scheduled a public hearing for the community, because the county wasn't, in my mind, was not appropriately upholding its responsibility to give the community a voice. And so I thought, well, I can do that, and I did. And following that, it was a very overwhelming turnout in opposition to coal. I made a concerted effort to make sure that everybody on all sides knew about it and could bring their information forward. And I know that GPT and its allies were aware of that, because I get emails from them. I'm on their listserv, and they were sending emails out asking people to turn out and support their side. At the end of that, I thought about it a couple more days, and I thought, you know, I have looked long and hard at the facts that are in front of us. And I also felt like, you know, one of the things that bothers me, and has bothered me before I was mayor as a citizen, is that a lot of times elected officials tend to equivocate. Because we see the broad spectrum of issues, and we have a broad spectrum of interests that are talking in our ears. So I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but I think that sometimes there are issues that are so clear, that are so compelling, that the community just wants somebody just to say, no, this is a bad idea. And I looked and I thought about it, and frankly I was losing sleep because I thought my responsibility was to come out against it, and yet I wasn't sure. That was not a familiar or comfortable feeling for me. But at the end of the day, or actually of a few days, that's exactly what I did. And I'll tell you what, you know, I think we have consciences for a reason. We lose sleep for a reason. I have not lost a minute of sleep about that decision. And so, you know, I guess my question for anybody that says, well, let's wait and find out if it's really a single-purpose facility or not, is to say, you know, they're going to run 1 billion tons of coal through that facility before they even talk in their own documents about running an ounce of anything else. How many billion tons does it take before you call it coal only? So, you know, I feel very comfortable in my position. I believe my position is consistent with protecting the interests of this community, a community that values sustainability, that values our social structure, that values our ecosystem, our natural structures, and values the jobs that we have here in fisheries, in all kinds of sustainable industries, in all kinds of other industries that are put at risk by this very proposal. So I want to make sure that I use every bit of authority that I have in my office to make sure that this doesn't happen. And as I suspect you know, I've already been doing that. I've got mayors across the state that are lining up with us. I've been criticized for being too quick to act, although as I pointed out, it took me 8 months to act. I'm not sure what too quick really looks like. But the reality is we've got mayors across the state now representing close to, if not in fact, the majority of the state's population that have come out against this proposal. We have economic development agencies like the Port of Skagit saying, from an economic perspective, this is a disaster as it's proposed. This is a very clear-cut issue by almost any metric you use. And one of the things I like to point out is history is a good teacher. And so when people say, well, you know, you shouldn't be opposing it because they've got so much power behind them, they're going to win anyway, and you're losing the chance to have conversations. After they win, they won't talk to you. Well, if they win, I don't know if I want to talk to them either. But I'll be damned if they're going to win, because the reality is I look to history and I say, you know what? I will give up on this fight when you can show me the nuclear power plant in the floodplain of the Skagit River. And some of you are laughing because you know the history. And a lot of you are sitting there saying, what the hell is he talking about? Well, that's a good thing. The good thing is you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, because in the 1970s, the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the governor, the business community, the labor community were all united to build a nuclear power plant in the floodplain of the Skagit River. And as much as it pains me to give credit to somebody with whom I have disagreed on almost everything in his political life since, I believe in also giving credit to people where credit is due. So there were a lot of people that looked a lot like the people in this room that stood up and said this is a bad idea, but you know, they weren't getting all the traction they needed until an elected official stood with them. And that elected official was the current mayor of Mount Vernon, Bud Norris. So he's done a lot of things in his life I've disagreed with, including recently trying to deny, doing a lot of things against the Hispanic community. But sometimes people can find redemption with a single act. And for me, he gets a lot of redemption with that act. And he also gave me hope for my ability to use my office to stop something equally bad in our current day. So with that, I'm going to leave and let the panelists come up and talk more in detail about the things that they've been uncovering. And I have to go because I've got an appointment with Kelly Linville for a debate at Municipal Court. But, and it'll be online later, so you guys can see it later if you want to see what we talk about. That's a social service forum. And I would encourage you to look at it, because I think, this is, our community is made up of a lot of different threads of fabric, and the social service aspects are really critical right now. So I think everything's critical right now. So thank you all for being here and paying attention to this, and thank the panelists and the Follets and Mr. McCauley for putting this on. And I appreciate everything that you guys are doing to try to help in this fight.